as property trends are concerned, the colors.
This show is informative, inclusive, and up-to-date. Proudly powered by HK Properties, Uganda. Every Saturday from 7:30 to 8 p.m. on UBC TV.
Hello and welcome to the backstage of this generation, where the young and restless face the bold and beautiful.
It has been a very interesting journey.
Yeah.
First of all, people are noticing that comedy is a funny way of being serious.
You want to get a glimpse of Uganda's view?
Well, it's a very good morning. My name is Jagenda Semakola Ziksoka. Welcome to Pan-African Friday on another day. It is the 14th of January in this year 2020. Another very lovely morning. We thank you so much for choosing to be with us yet again today. We're starting a little late, but we just ask for your indulgences to accept that we will be here for another 1.5 hours on our Pan-African Friday. With me in studios today is Ambassador Henry Mayiga, our ambassador from Abu Dhabi. You're very welcome, Ndugu Ambassador Mayiga. Karibu, and thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you very much, and good morning, our listeners.
I'm happy to have you.
The new year is very interesting. So many things happening, both in the country and also on the African continent. And they speak about how I think we should get into the business of determining the future.
Where were you on this day last year? On this day here in Uganda, we are actually voting. It was election day today, last year, 2021. I just want to know where you are. Were you at the embassy?
By this time I was driving to the village to go and cast my vote.
Oh, you were in the country?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was.
What do you remember about this day last year?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I voted for the president who won.
Oh, for the candidate who won?
Yes. But he was already president. He was a sitting president.
Oh, okay. Yes. He was a sitting president. He was a president.
No contradiction.
No contradiction about that. Okay, candidate president. Welcome, Ambassador Mayiga. We thank you so much. Of course, together with us in studios is Ndugu Rugarama, the chairman of the Pan-African Movement Uganda chapter. You're very welcome, Ndugu Rugarama.
Good morning, comrades and my fellow panelists. I thank you so much, Ndugu Jagenda, for once again this opportunity. I'm always looking forward to participating in this vibrant and lively debate. And I thank you, our audience, for always tuning in and sometimes bearing with us. Like now we have a little bit started late, but we thank you all the same. Okay.
This day last year, who were voting? Let me hear your thoughts about this day last year.
I can only comment about the general exercise that it was, and the reports that came through finally. It was a free and fair exercise. That is always there. It's like pretending that you have a marriage and the marriage is perfect all through. But on the whole, it was a very good exercise. Of course, it also offered lessons, and I think as developing democracy, we still have 1, 2, 3 things to learn and perfect. Either some of the things we do maybe by omission, and others by commission.
And of course, Rutaro Stephen, he's an advocate. So for having allowed to join us on a Pan-African Friday for the very first time. Karibu, Rutaro.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is my second time on
okay.
this
I remember.
program. And I'm always happy when I'm invited. And like we had already shared before, it is in my thinking, and I still can defend that everyone born in Africa and African is a Pan-African. However, it depends on the circumstances in which has been brought up. Some people behave in a manner that is an African, and somebody is it may be quick to say this one is not a Pan-Africanist, yet in actual sense is a Pan-Africanist. So I'm very happy to be here as a Pan-Africanist from a group party for democratic change. I think we are leading again in showing the nation and the continent what it means
a blue party with a red card.
With a red card.
Oh, so
a red card, which not necessarily is an FDC thing. Everyone, even from NRM, who is looking at the country and saying the country probably is not going in the right direction and join the red card, it does not necessarily mean that the red card is an FDC thing. It is out of individuals who come together and say we can red card the people who we think they are not playing a fair game, and it is this red card that can put them on the side and let other people participate in the leadership of the country.
Back to the other one, before you actually get into our issues of conversation this morning, you talked about somebody being born in Africa and being Pan-African. Is being African the same as being Pan-Africanist?
My school of thought is Africa, of all the continents, is well known for brotherhood. And Pan-Africanism is about caring for your neighbor's needs. It is most said in Africa than practiced, especially when it comes at political leadership. We talk about Pan-Africanism in Uganda, Pan-Africanism in Rwanda. But today, people of Rwanda who are my neighbors in the Kabare cannot cross the country. The wananchi, the means and the use of Rwanda have no problem. We dig, we cross and dig.
We marry.
They cross and dig.
We even marry.
All right? But we have no problem with each other. We consider ourselves brothers. When a Rwandan citizen comes to Uganda, he's accepted in our homes. When I cross and go to Rwanda, I am accepted in their homes. But now, the people who preach about Pan-Africanism, they've crossed borders now for almost 3 years. Now, who is a Pan-Africanist? Is it that person who has crossed the border, or that person who still believes if by chance I cross this river and go to Uganda, I'll still be helped? My thinking is that other person who has faith that because I am African and when I am received by this other African, I will be comfortable at home, is a Pan-African.
Nduguru Garama, you seem to disagree with Rutaro on the thought of being African and being a Pan-Africanist. Before I get to the ambassador, because you are from the Pan-African movement, the ambassador is a diplomat, but is a member of the ruling NRM party, and Comrade Dutaro here, the advocate, is a member of the opposition party. And I just also want to know where these political parties actually put our Pan-African spirit. Let me hear your thoughts first.
As Dutaro continued to submit, I realized that his views are actually not bad. The concept of Pan-Africanism involves what he has just mentioned, but at the same time, it does not mean that somebody who gets off temporarily the principles of Pan-Africanism becomes less of a Pan-Africanist. Maybe at that material time when what he's doing, he or she is not Pan-African. Of course, the color does not necessarily determine the concept that because you are black, for instance, and that is another debate also, the blackness and the whiteness of humanity. Mankind. It's another debate. I will not go into it, but for purposes of this debate, let me say that you being black, Dr. Clark, the African American, is the one who actually put it right. He said, you see, it does not matter. We have so many Africans on the African continent who are actually not Pan-Africanists. And I think I agree. In West Africa, there is one president, French, as we call it, French West Africa, you can imagine also. The French West Africa, when a French president died, he was seen shedding tears and claiming that actually it was because of that particular president that his country is what it is. In his opinion, his country was far much better off because they could speak French. So you can see that we have, up to now, by the way, we have got pseudo Pan-Africanists. They are there, and therefore the concept of Pan-African. Of course, I will have, it's an opportunity that I have met Rotaro, and I think we shall have a deeper discussion about Pan-Africanism.
About Pan-Africanism. but you're welcome. Ambassador Maiga, coming back to you there, the NRM, before I get into issues, your party, the National Resistance Movement Party, is hinged on 4 pillars, and Pan-Africanism is one of the 4 pillars just right there. And we just want to know whether the concept and that particular pillar of Pan-Africanism is actually a very vibrant one. In your party that you're preaching it, the people, teaching it, the people, and actually practicing it, away from just talking about it.
Absolutely, yes. It is entrenched, as you've said in your remarks. And, you know, in many of these things that we do, whether as individuals or countries or societies and so on and so forth, there must be a robust leadership in order for an idea to be advanced. And I think when it comes to Pan-Africanism, President Yoweri Museveni has been doing very well, because he has not only paid lip service, I mean, he hasn't paid just lip service in as far as Pan-Africanism is concerned. You can see the level, his level of activism on the African continent in terms of peacekeeping, in terms of trying as much as possible to bring countries together, especially in the East African region, and even beyond sometimes, because as you know, our national army has actually been in quite a number of places on the African continent trying to enforce peace. And so the idea of Pan-Africanism is not simply something that has been written in the manifesto of the NRM over time, especially whenever we have been coming to elections, but it's something that is deeply really entrenched in as far as the NRM is concerned, and it's because there is a robust leadership of President Yoweri Museveni that has really given credence to our pursuance as a country of the concept of Pan-Africanism. So what he has said, what has been written in the manifestos of the NRM, and what actually has been done on the ground on the African continent is a display of a leadership that is committed and really has invested quite a lot of resources in as far as Pan-Africanism is concerned. So it's really
why I want to agree with Ndugu Garama here of the Pan-African movement is when we talk about politics, for example, now you who belong to political parties and you who are members of political party X, Y, or Z, you normally, or we normally hear you, all your people, the members in your parties, talking about issues, and many of them are actually disjointed from the issues that happen elsewhere. When you talk about issues in the FDC, you are basically starting from a beam all through to maybe Kawali, and that's it. You know, your concentration is there. When you bring in another political party, you will hear that their issues are basically local issues. We talk about issues about ourselves, and we don't seem to know the other dynamics elsewhere. Ambassador, now, for example, as a diplomat, one of the reasons why you are where you are is to look at how this country, Uganda, relates with the other countries in terms of trade, politics, welfare, etc., etc. And I just want to still know from you whether our political parties are doing enough to inculcate the Pan-African spirit in our citizenry, in our people, and of course the members in these particular groups.
You see, having worked with the university, normally I want to base my judgment of situations on something that has actually been scientifically proven. In other words, there must be a research in as far as a concept or the implementation of it is concerned. I don't want to point fingers in as far as the appreciation of the concept of Pan-Africanism is concerned, but rather to say that yes, as far as the political will, as far as the will by the current administration in the country is concerned, when it comes to Pan-Africanism, I think it is very strong, in as far as as far as I can see. Now, I can't speak on behalf of the rest of the parties, but I can speak and I can ably speak about what I have seen in the NRM, because again of what I said before, of the robust leadership of President Yoweri Museveni. Pan-Africanism has been a point of emphasis, not only something that is being talked about, but rather written, really encrypted in the various manifestos that we've had ever since we began having these regular and predictable elections after every 5 years. It is something that really is being cultivated. As far as really pointing how much, with accuracy, what is the percentage of that commitment, and so on and so forth. I think we need to carry out some kind of research, and then we find out, and then we conclude that yes, this political party has done so much in as far as implementing or appreciating the concept of Pan-Africanism.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I have just a small concern. You see, it is difficult to judge the strength of a child before the child is born. The mother is still carrying a pregnancy, and you judge the strength of that child even before the child is born. No, these are political parties. But just a minute, my brother.
In Uganda, we have a saying that akaliba akendo or kalabira kumukonda. Another proverb says entamu ewulira gusooka. We have all these that can actually judge you when you still in infancy.
I will appreciate those sayings, but I also say don't judge a book by its cover, from its cover. What I wanted to say is, these other political parties have not taken up power in Uganda to see how they exercise that power in relationship to the rest of Africa. That's number one. Number two, these other political parties have not even been given a chance to thrive, even within. You cannot organize within your country. How would you be even given an opportunity to organize and express your international thoughts, your Pan-African thoughts outside the country? Even if they wanted, do they even have means? Because we all know how poor these political parties are in Uganda. We have the NUP has come in, which was just born yesterday. Most political parties in Uganda are born out of frustration. When you see how NRM came as a result of a prolonged, a 5-year war mostly in Ruwero, and it took over power. So unless these political parties have an opportunity to take over the leadership of the country, and you see how they act in relationship with other countries, it would be very unfair to judge their agenda, their Pan-African agenda in general. Let's look at NRM. When we went to Chisangani as a Pan-Africanist, what was the result? We were taken to the International Court of Justice. Why? We plundered, we rooted. All right? Is that Pan-Africanism? So the question is, if NRM...
Did we loot as an agenda, or one of us...
One of us, who is one of us?
No, I mean we, the players. Did we go to loot, or when we go to do something, for example...
the Bible says they will be judged by their fruits.
So who are these now?
Already you know, as a Pan-Africanist, that Uganda was taken to court because of the activities.
That's what I'm asking. Was Uganda's position to go and loot in Kisangani, or Rutaro and Rugarama and Maiga misbehaved?
You see, Uganda was represented. Okay? Uganda was represented by generals, by the army in. I don't remember you or him, Rugarama, or Stephen Rutaro's name coming up. We hear names of the people who were participating in the war. Okay? And they are the people who should be, they are the trustees of the Pan-African pillars. When they are there, their behavior to the people they have visited in the courts, they should be able to learn 1 or 2, 3 things. But if you are clandestinely harvesting timber, if you are clandestinely, at that time actually Uganda was one of the leading exporters of gold, but they said we don't have clear known mines of gold in Uganda. Where is gold coming from? I get what I'm trying to say. So let us not just talk, let us act. I've been in places where peacekeeping forces have been. I've been to Iraq, I've been to South Sudan. I have seen the behavior, for instance, of the American soldiers on peacekeeping mission. They stick to the mission. They stick to the mission. What is the mission? Peacekeeping. Peacekeeping.
Yes. Let him conclude.
Let me conclude this one. It won't take so long.
Yes, please.
But now we go to Sangani. Now I understand we have gone back.
Don't understand. It's true actually.
Yes, I understand.
We
are now in the Congo again.
There is Operation Shujaa now.
I am not a prophet. Okay, I'm not a prophet.
But
let's wait for results. Because the president at one time said, when a snail is moving, it leaves behind a track. And if you want to know where that snail is, you track it by, you trace it by the track it has left behind. What is our track record wherever we go? Do we plant the seeds of pan-africanism, or we plant seeds of
where else have we been? Where else have we gone as a country? We've gone to we've been of course to DRC. We've gone to Somalia. We've gone to Chad. We've gone to Sudan. Where else have we been? And what's our trail there? Where we've done?
I've given already an example of what we have done in Kisangani. All right. Apparently, we are also in Somalia, where we are doing a good job. But wait for when that period ends, and you look at the report.
The results.
You understand? So let's look at the track record. My problem is, and I will state it here, is that I don't love lip service. I want to be judged by my actions. I want to be judged by my actions. And those actions are what I do when there is no camera. And when there is no camera, when all the cameras have died down, when all the media friends has died down, the reports that come out.
Ndugu Rugarama, you wanted to comment on something because Rutaro here has just amused you. We talk about pan-Africanism, of course.
Rutaro here, I have just realized he is going to become a very good friend.
I'm already a friend.
In terms of appreciating some of these issues, really. See, learning never stops. Professor Mbiti says that even in death we learn. I want to state that the track record of, I'm not the spokesperson of NRM. I'm not campaigning to be one.
You are the chairman of the Pan-African Movement.
I'm the chairman of the Pan-African Movement Uganda chapter. So the views which I'm expressing here should not be construed or aligned to the movement agenda for that matter. But if there's something good in NRM, I will say it. Now, NRM, and especially the UPDF, as far as the Pan-African agenda is concerned, away from Uganda, has certainly done a wonderful job. There is no doubt about that. When you are engaged in an activity, there will always be some elements of indiscipline here and there. But that does not take away the overall credit that an institution, for instance, would have earned. We've been to Somalia. The record, even if you went to Somalia on ground, speaks for itself. And we are not the only ones there. There are other armies, but the discipline, the level of discipline of UPDF is very unmatched. We've been to Central African Republic. We've been to Rwanda, if you like. We've been to Congo, like he says, Kisangani. But in a majority of these cases, maybe where, like I said, one or two things don't go right, and that is normal, we've certainly exhibited the Pan-African spirit. The army, the so-called the American army, which my brother Taro talked about, which is all over with their bases and having a criminal record, with respect, I disagree. We know, for instance, the so-called United Nations military presence in form of MONUC and MONUSCO in DRC, and we very well know that that is nothing but a cover for the imperialists being headed, of course, by the hegemonic America to plunder the resources of those countries, especially DRC in this particular case. We very well know for how long, for instance, the so-called UN has been in DRC, right from when we look at Leopold, who was the king and having carved out the DRC or Congo, for that matter, as his personal empire. Later on, the Belgium as a country taking it over. And when they started trying to get the semblance of proper leadership in senior comrade, may his soul rest in eternal peace, Emile Patrice Lumumba, how he was through a combination of CIA and Belgium assassinated, and they installed somebody, Mobutu Sese Seko, to perpetuate their imperialistic agenda. And from that time and onwards, Congo, having been a garden of the imperialists through the deployment of the UN security forces, and we know the forces behind, of course, those so-called security forces. And therefore, you cannot talk about the UN security so-called peace forces in a country like DRC as having a clean record when the plundering, like our sister Dr. Ambassador Chihombori Arcana says, you look at the level of plundering through the air travel, the planes landing and taking off. And therefore, our track record, even in our short time of NRM, cannot be compared with what America does wherever they have gone. Now, having said that, that certainly is no record at all. I want to flash back and say that we still have a lot to do, especially because, again, I'm reminded of the words of my counterpart in Nigeria, Comrade Osborne. He said, by the time I depart from this world and the Pan-African agenda has not been appreciated by my grandmother in the village of Kanu, then I would have done nothing. In the same spirit, like Ambassador Maiga was trying to put it in perspective, NRM, although it has got the Pan-African agenda as in its constitution. As an ideology. Yes, in its the constitution after patriotism. You can see that it is not well and evenly shared across the board. There are quite a number of people, even in sensitive institutions within the government, who do not appreciate Pan-Africanism. If it is not the president talking about it, and who is actually our patron, and a few others, you know, a few others, for instance, the Maigas of this world now, the General Kahindo Tafiris, the Masikos, and what, they are there. I'm not saying that, but they are there. But when you look at the percentage of those who appreciate, including, with due respect, our Pan-African parliament members from Uganda, you can see that we still have a lot of work to do. The truth of the matter is that the Pan-African concept is a wonderful concept. The President of the Republic of Uganda, who happens to be the patron, has always, at all material times, done a wonderful job. But I want to state that we still have a lot of work to do to make sure, like Ndugu Comrade Osborne said, that the Pan-African concept is appreciated down the grassroots.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Now, our colleagues, Call Monday Amazima is not with us, and James Mututa is also not with us today, but I'm here, of course, to manage it with my guests in studios, as you've known already. Ndugu Rugarama here from the Pan-African Movement Uganda chapter, Ndugu Stephen Utaro from the Blue Party, the Forum for Democratic Change, and Ambassador Henry Maega, our Deputy Ambassador, Deputy Head of Nations in Abu Dhabi, also with us here. Ndugu Ambassador, let me just come to you now. We talk about the Pan-African issue, and of course talking about the African agenda and shaping the African agenda. We just want to know where we are, because where are we in shaping Africa's agenda? We talk about all the things. When we talk about Pan-Africanism, for example, we cite a few examples here. We've gone to Somalia, and by the grace of God, we've tried to pacify that country. We are in Sudan, we are in Central African Republic, we are in the DRC, of course, managing issues there, to see how we have a peaceful region. We are everywhere. Look at what is actually happening in Ethiopia, where Ethiopians have also a civil strife that has marred Abiy Ahmed's leadership since 2018. He came into power, made this peace ambassador, and just a few months down the road, he got the Tigray question. That is also destabilizing his reign and grip to power in Ethiopia. Where are we in all these things? Because we have lots of very good things. Talk about the Africa Agenda 2063. Talk about the Africa Free Continental Trade Areas. Talk about, these are all game changers, but who runs these things? Where are we in shaping these things? When you look at our internal democracies, when we get back home and we get to politics like this, and the FDC says, no, our track record is plundering and doing all the things, then we ask our question, where are we when we talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? When we talk about the Agenda 2063, and partners who would be helping us get there will say, no, we'll plunder, we'll do all the things. Where are we, Ndugu?
Absolutely. In my view, I think the spirit, the Pan-African spirit, let me, for lack of a better word, call it a spirit, definitely is in the minds of quite a number of people on the African continent. And President Yoweri Museveni, of course, is one of them. There's no doubt about it. Because you remember when we had a problem in Libya, as the Western world was chasing after Gaddafi, it's not a secret anymore. Our President Yoweri Museveni got hold of a phone and he rang, I think, Mbeki, who was president of South Africa, to raise, was it Zuma? Yes. To raise a force to go and enforce stability in Libya. Now, if that doesn't speak about how the leadership of President Yoweri Museveni, yes, we are few, like my colleagues have already said, that really believe in Pan-Africanism. There is no doubt about it. And we need probably to cultivate it further so that the catchment area enlarges, not only in Uganda, but also beyond. Extremely important. So this spirit, in my view, is extremely important, the spirit of Pan-Africanism, because it's actually one way that can cut across political parties in a country and also on the continent. So it's a very, very important spirit which we need to cultivate. So, but you asked an important question, that where are we? Where are we? And I wanted to bring in a dimension that keeps frustrating these things and these efforts. You become a very good Pan-Africanist, a leader of a country in Africa, and you try as much as possible to cultivate Pan-Africanism across the continent. But then you have these divisions that were introduced to us by the colonial masters, that there is Francophone Africa, there is Anglophone. As a diplomat, I've come across these things, and we have gone to meetings, and I've seen how divisive these things are. Okay. To the extent, for instance, when we were in China, and we had FOCAC, there was that jostling between the Francophone countries and the Anglophone countries as to who should become more visible, more influential, in as far as the FOCAC is concerned. So you find these things even beyond the continent, people trying as much as possible and frustrate these things. So you always have this invisible hand, or should I say it has actually become invisible, of particularly the Western world, to make sure that these things don't succeed. And this is really something that we must contend with. Yes, we might come to these studios and talk all the theories that there is, but there are forces that probably are beyond our control. Take the case of the AU meetings and so on and so forth. Mugabe used to be my icon Robert Mugabe. He was a true Pan-African, a Pan-Africanist. Because when you really watch this, I mean, listen to the speeches that he used to give to the AU, he was really a point-blank person, talking about Africanness, how we need to come together. But then, behind his back, you'll find other leaders. Fortunately, mine is not included in those ones. Really working behind, absolutely backstabbing the effort. And so it becomes extremely difficult. And especially if we continue to go to these places looking for loans and all these kinds of things, Pan-Africanism will remain something that just comes out of our lips, and the realization of it will become extremely difficult. But that doesn't suggest that we should give up the struggle. The struggle must continue, because when you look at for instance, how Europe came together through the pan-European kind of thing, and at the moment we are talking about the EU, very strong. Of course, the UK the other day left because of their strong nationalism. They wanted to be out of the net, and so they left it. So, but the Europeans have really tried as much as possible. But again, even within the EU, you still find examples of jostling. The French, for instance, and the Germans are the most influential, but of course the most resourced in Europe, and which funds and the economy. Remember, even during the that meltdown, the economic meltdown that came in 2008,
the recession of 2008,
Germany kept its economy very strong, and so it funds all sorts of small countries in Europe. So they have their pan-European kind of arrangement, but still they have some small, but they have moved. They have tried to move together, and they're still together, apart from the UK, which left. So probably we need to pick lessons from the rest of these continents that have had this kind of, for lack of a better word, pan-European parliament, pan-European and so on and so forth. So of course we have a Parliament of Africa at the moment. As to how its teeth can bite, I don't know. And so we need to really move. But I want to be very thankful to President Yoweri Museveni, because he has really tried in hardest of circumstances to make sure that this becomes a reality.
Just picking it from where you've left it, I'll rush you to the World Economic Forum of 2019 that was in Davos in Switzerland. When President Paul Kagame of Rwanda was actually speaking in that particular conference in Switzerland, during that economic forum in Switzerland, he actually said a united Africa benefits everyone in Africa, and that's where we need to go. And he was of course touched on quite a number of things and talked about leadership and the age of leaders. And Paul Kagame in his response says being old is not the problem, but having able leaders who can actually manage to take us through. Now you look at all these things and say, when you look at the treaty that brings the EU and look at the treaty that brings the African Union, you wonder why, like you said, EU is actually progressing. There are with a lot of challenges in here. Britain says this, but of course they're there, and they're with the other challenges, but they're still going on. What about Africa? What needs to be done on the continent? For example, you will see that you have a leader in Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni, and he's talking about Pan-Africanism. If he's not present tomorrow, and Uganda gets a new leader who possibly knows nothing about Pan-Africanism, and the neighbors in Rwanda are possibly talking about that. You have a leader possibly in another country who's talking about Pan-Africanism, and just that kind of thing where we do not seem to have a common agenda or something that we're following. Everybody comes with their own interests. Shall we manage to shape our own agenda in the global arena?
It's work in progress. As far as I can see, it's work in progress, because you cannot say that you can. It's something that you can say you can do in, for instance, 10 years or 20 years or even 50 years. So in my view, it's just work in progress. You remember, again, let me go back to FOCAC. You see the West. This is a loud whisper, actually. It's a loud whisper. It's not something that we should just keep in our minds and so on and so forth. Because nobody wants a strong Africa. The Western world, in other words, does not want a strong Africa. It's very clear, absolutely clear. Because you remember the other day when the Chinese called us for that leaders for the FOCAC, the leaders forum, the president of China and then African presidents, and I think $50 billion was put on the table. What followed? What followed is that the US also called African leaders, but they picked a few. Some few were not invited for that, but they invited, and they gave I don't remember the sum of money that they gave. So at the end of the day, if this Africanness that we are talking about is not strong enough to see through these kinds of things and then determine who exactly a good friend is, it will become difficult, because others will probably be enticed. Even actually the Indians also, you remember, they called African heads of state for a meeting, and the Russians also called. So, which is good in a sense, because they are calling us to make sure that probably we can be helped out of a quagmire, an economic quagmire, and so that our economies, African economies, can actually be boosted, which is good. But we need very intelligent leadership on the African continent to see through all these attempts by whoever is inviting these African heads of state, so that even if we access those monies they are giving us, still, like the Baganda would say, the muramwa must remain, that this Africanness is extremely important for us as a region. And if we came together as an economic bloc, and you talked about the free trade area in Africa, which is good, I have seen it on paper, but when it comes to the realization of it on the ground, when other countries are closing borders to their neighbors,
to one another,
then that misses the very purpose. So I heard you quote one of them, and I was laughing in my heart, because that very one who you quoted is the very one who closed the border to us. So how can we talk about these things and then make sure that we actualize them, actualize them, when we are still closing borders to each other? So for me, that is a very big. So we need to move beyond. We need to move beyond just saying these things, and then we move together as a bloc, as an African continent, and then yes, we can continue access. We can continue getting resources from the Western world and whoever wants to give them to us, but really put our foot down to make sure that Pan-Africanism still remains the reality.
Okay. Nduguru Taro, we have been conditioned to think that our biggest problem as the continent of Africa is actually leadership, and that's why it is when we wait to listening to political players. Now, not so many Ugandans have had the privilege of seeing another president or seeing a change in leadership. Majority of the Ugandans that we're talking to possibly are just as old as this regime, and they've not seen a new president. But we've seen this elsewhere. You go to the Gambia, where we had President Yahya Jammeh after 22 years. We saw Adama Barrow come on, and he's actually taken another term. Nothing much seems to have changed there. You go to Burkina Faso, where we saw the majority, the masses coming off, and of course overthrowing President Blaise Compaoré. And between Compaoré and actually Roch Kabore today, they had a series of presidents in there. And even with the president now, Marc Roch Kabore there, he doesn't seem like he's holding the country at that grip. You go to countries like Malawi, where we have President Makathe, Lazarus Chakwera, taking over from Peter Mutharika. Nothing still seems to be, we may say it's too early to call now for Chakwera, for example, 2020, and now we may be just making tall orders for him. Go to Kenya here. When power changed from Daniel Arap Moi and it came to Mwai Kibaki, of course Mwai Kibaki also came from the opposition. And when he got there, there were things of constitution amendments, quite a number of things. When he got there, he also said no. Brings in another opposition person who was then Muigai Kenyatta. Muigai Kenyatta has been there, he's ending his 10 years. He also came from the opposition. Go to now Zambia, where we've seen how powers actually changed in Zambia, and we've seen people coming from the opposition about 6 times taking over. People are just getting excited recently about Hichilema Hakainde, as if he's the first to come from the opposition to take power. He's maybe number 4, 5 or 6. Go to the other places. In Nigeria, President Buhari came and everybody said, especially in the FDC, you compared him to Dr. Kizza Besigye and say he's a man tried 4 times or 5 times, now won there. Same can happen to Kizza Besigye. Now, when you see the leadership of President Buhari in Nigeria, and get back to 2015, you wonder and say, why in the first place did President Buhari even come to power? So we've seen, yes, we've seen these things happening back and forth to us. Opposition parties, the MCP, Kamin DPP, UDPP, and quite a number of those. Is that our biggest problem, that when you come into power, when we see a change of power from one ruling government to another from the opposition also taking power, then that solves the problem of Africa? I've just given you many of these, and there are more actually that we could share.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all those examples. Okay? But I never want to give examples. When I'm giving examples, I want to look at examples that do not bring hope. I'll start with Kenya. If you were in Kenya at the time when Daniel Arap Moi was a president, and the Kenya of today, there is a huge difference in terms of infrastructure development. That if today Europe or Dubai, I will give an example of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, the other day they suspended flights to Uganda and Kenya. The other day Kenya reciprocated in the same measure. Do you know why? Because Kenya, where the path it is taking is a path of self-sustainability. And it is because of leadership trying to change ABCD. But if Africa wants to do the same things and expecting different results, we cannot move. What's our African problem? Our African problem is we are not doing business. We are not trading. When you look at our balance of payment, for instance, with China, China exports so much to Uganda, to Africa. I'm looking at African continent. Let's not talk about pan-Africanism and we only think pan-Africanism is Uganda versus the rest of Africa. China is exporting over 100 billion worth of goods to Africa. But what are we exporting to China? And when on the same table, we cannot have any bargaining power. And that's why they can stabilize us. China sits there in Beijing and says, we have a dream. We must connect the world with one road, one rail network. They come and they say, standard gauge rail. What do we have to put? We exaggerate prices. That's why in Uganda, for instance, Kenya, as I speak today, Naivasha, it is now from Mombasa to Naivasha. At least we have a goods carrier rail. Standard gauge. In Uganda, we cannot even, we don't have anything. And at the time when Exim Bank was giving out money to Kenya, that's the time we should also have received the money. If Africa does not come, change of players does not necessarily mean that Africa is going to be better.
And because I appreciate what you're saying, and I know many of these things, the standard gauge and why it's at Naivasha, not even Malaba or all the things, but because at the end of the day, it will be a political question. It will be a leadership issue. I in the FDC, I in UPC, I in DP, I in NUP will demand that Maega gives up power. That I in UP, so NUP comes into power with all these issues. And the public out here will say, you Maegas have actually failed the standard gauge. Step aside. We'll bring in a new government. We'll bring in new leadership. But we've seen these new leaderships coming in. That's what I'm actually saying. That when you go to and see what Hakainde Hichilema is doing, what Chakwera has done, what Ndugu Andama Barrow has failed to do in the Gambia, and quite a number of things. Nigerians shouted, they laughed, they jubilated when they saw Buhari coming in. But has his coming in solved the problem? Has his coming in helped anything? Because there are issues there. How has his leadership helped to build ECOWAS and quite a number of things?
I would still go back to Nigeria and Buhari. You see, Buhari is receiving a lot of punches because the world wants Buhari to look as if he should receive those punches. When Buhari came, he opened to the world to see what they had not seen before. For instance, why Buhari seems to be a bad president in Nigeria is his fight against corruption. His fight against corruption took another trajectory, which originally had not been the case. And because of that, so many things started taking another shape, which did not necessarily amuse whether the Western world or people within Nigeria. I am hopeful that if Buhari is to keep on with the struggle against corruption, it may probably give some results.
Buhari has managed corruption, or it has even just...
I've said, if he continues on the right track of fighting corruption, you understand? Fighting corruption in Uganda, we have been singing about corruption every year. We have a president who everyone wants to praise. He has done ABCD, but every year corruption is getting worse and worse. You saw the report of Honorable Betkamia, where he says each year over 20 trillion Ugandan shillings. 2021, 2022, we had a budget of 44.7 trillion. If that 20 trillion is swindled out of that 44 trillion, where are we? And this is Uganda, where we have had a leadership.
But the budget is not liquidity.
Where we have, hold on, that is, she even showed.
Because what is stolen is gone.
She even showed in clear terms where that money comes from wastages, from absenteeism. Now, we have had the leadership from 1986, okay? To date, still corruption is getting worse every single year. We have the IGG, we have Nakalema. In the media, they are working, but in actual sense, when you get the reports, everything is wasted.
I don't know whether we're going to make corrections.
Yes, you're allowed to make corrections. You're allowed to make corrections.
Starting with the SGR. You know, I worked in China for 5 years. I know the story very well. It is not true. It is not true to assert that the ORM7 administration actually failed
the SGR.
The SGR. Because there were quite a number of issues, especially from the Chinese side, which were, for purposes of diplomatic purposes, some of the things I can skip. But it's not true that the ORM7 administration actually failed to construct its bit of the SGR. Because actually the SGR is supposed to go to Southern Sudan, supposed to go to Rwanda, supposed to go to Burundi. It was a regional project. Yeah. Now, Kenya, of course, they borrowed money from the Chinese, and I don't know from where else. But the economy was actually heating up. That's why you see the beat stopping actually in Naivasha. And you don't know, again, the underhand methods of the Western-based financial institutions. How they said that this thing, and they impressed it upon even the Chinese, how, in their view, the SGR actually is not economically viable, and therefore putting in more money probably wouldn't make economic sense. These are things that I shouldn't have said in this studio. But it's not true that the ORM7 administration actually has failed to see off its bit of the SGR. No, that is not true. But there are so many other dynamics, and for diplomatic purposes I think I've said everything you can understand from that.
Okay.
So it is not true, and I think your question was, is it true that change of governments will actually make sure that we
is that what you want as a
succeed as far as pan-Africanism is
because I will accept maybe.
So people can actually stay in power for as long as they can. Like, I mean, it's very clear. President URM7 has been here for...
I accept. And
that is the question.
Let me think. Well, let the NRM fail the SGR. I know the dynamics of the SGR. I know the diversions. And I actually know why it has stopped at Naivasha and had all these issues.
And it can't come even to Malaba.
Exactly.
Yes,
but of course...
there's that bit of Kenya where it can't come.
But we talk about the change of power. Because somebody may say, okay, we need the SGR and President Museveni has failed with the SGR. Let's get President Museveni away. And it goes. When President Museveni goes away, will we have the SGR?
Can I still continue?
Please.
Let me still continue on that. You see, Africa and most of these countries you've talked about, okay, when you look at the Gambia, that is a country which had been run down in terms of systems and structures, policies, no clear policies. It had been run down by that the president who was defeated by the young man. Okay. Now the question, the thing is, when you inherit a country which has been run down in terms of systems, in terms of institutions, you start on scratch building.
How much time do you need
hold on. That is why, for instance, in other countries, you're not giving me examples of Ghana where they are changing leadership and leadership is doing a good job. Not giving me examples of South Africa where they are changing leadership and leadership is doing very well.
And need to negotiate how South Africa changes its
South Africa. We know the problem of Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma as a president.
But go back before Jacob Zuma.
There was, of course, Mbeki. You see, he said some diplomatic things may not allow him to say many things. This Mbeki fell into traps of imperialists. Okay? Mbeki was a wonderful president for South Africa. That's why today he's one of the Africa's most respected statesmen. So his term of office, I feel so sad that it did not come to an end in a manner that should have come to an end.
And do you know why I didn't talk about South Africa in my examples? Because South Africa is ANC. it is the same house that is changing players within. I'm looking at countries that have actually thrown out a ruling party and brought an opposition party. I'm not looking at the NRM moving from President Museveni to another NRM. That's not what I'm talking about. Maybe Ghana, because yes, we've seen Ghana move from one party to another. Ghana, it's just a two-horse race. It's either NPP or NDC, NPP or NDC. Everyone comes for 8 years, then they change. We've at least seen that. That Mahama Dramani was the president, he's now in the opposition. Nana Akufo-Dankwa was in the opposition, he's now the president. I'm looking at a scenario like that. Not one party changing leadership.
I know, of course, my brother will carry on his submission. But permit me really say this, that you see, we can talk until cows come back as far as leadership on the African continent is concerned. Comrade Maiga looked at it and he said it in just a statement, and I agree with him, that the conceptual West will not sit by and see Africa thrive. All these regional blocks you see, there will always be it COMESA, be it IGAD, be it EACA, be it ECOWAS. There will always be an invisible hand. And now, like we have adopted, the hand is actually visible. Now, you see, the change of leadership, and I said it last time, I will repeat, that the change of leadership in on the African continent, in the various countries on the African continent, even if you got somebody from DP now, somebody from UPC, somebody from FDC, for instance, and he became the president, you are not going to show anything substantially different the moment the global forces are not. You see, it's a whole big picture that the global forces, the Bretton Woods institutions of the IMF and the World Bank have structured and captured the policies. They are almost uniform policies on the African continent. You cannot say, as far as economically speaking, as far as economics is concerned, as far as trade, we are talking about the balance of trade here, terms of trade, balance of trade, how you trade with America. They open the window, they are Goa. It's the same stuff with Ethiopia, same stuff with Uganda here. Of course, I do not want to give an excuse that even when we have got that window, there aren't cases of misuse. Sometimes we run that danger that there is a Goa, but we have deployed somebody in a Goa here in Uganda who has not reached the level that really does Uganda well. But the bigger picture here is that there will always be global forces. When you go to the confessions of the economic hitman,
economic hitman.
Yes, you are going to get this whole mind-boggling picture that the African continent, we need. Of course, we cannot put our hands on top of our heads and then we cry and say we are finished. No, we keep, like we say in the Pan-African movement, keep organizing rather than agonizing. Point is, when we go to African Continental Free Trade Area, we are moving, we are organizing. When we go to the Agenda 2063, we are not agonizing, we are organizing. We may not necessarily, when we have regional blocks, like we have seen what ECOWAS does. You remember the case of the Gambia, when the Yahya Jammeh was trying to refuse to come to
ECOWAS came in.
ECOWAS came in and said, brother, look, you either go or for us we come. He went. It's not that we are incapable of cleaning our house. We have in instances cleaned ours. And you see, Jagenda and our dear comrades and my dear panelists here, the danger we are running in our democracies here is that we seem to score marks when we come to such platforms and we castigate the government, there is no way I can say that NRM, for instance, does not have spillovers. It does not have mistakes here and there. and some, by the way, it can be big. But overall, what is NRM's performance? In my opinion, very promising. Can we do better? Yes, of course we can. Is it necessary to change the president? If the NRM thinks they want to change their president, let them get rid of him. Let them have somebody else. If it is FDC, for instance, that thinks the president we have is not doing a good job, organize better and get rid of him. I'm not saying that, and I go back, I'm not saying that sometimes we don't feel some of these underpinnings. Like, for instance, FDC wants to organize, to hold meetings, and somehow they are, even when it's legally speaking, they are supposed to do it. But you see, but even when that happens, is FDC, for instance, is NUP, for instance, that's so clear internally that you can see that apart from the interferences from the ruling government, they themselves are doing a good job. And my take is that no, they have got very serious inherent problems
internally. I've taken the information.
Okay. Yes,
I will conclude on
carry on with your conversation.
We have taken up an excusionist approach to Africa's problems.
Okay.
And African problems can only be solved when we are financially strong. But African governments, sitting governments, they are trigger happy. We blame the IMF, we blame World Bank, we blame those institutions. Who goes to look for loans from there? Does IMF come and say, take this, or if you don't take it, we will kill you?
Yes, they do.
Hold on. You see, just a minute. I understand those circumstances, but you see, when you are a legitimate government, elected by the people of your country, you have a responsibility to that country. We have become exclusionists and we want to blame everything on Europe. We want to blame everything on the Western countries. Is it, for instance, when we're talking about pan-africanism and the unity of African countries, here in Uganda, for instance, every day we are subdividing every village into a district. Every day. We have a parliament now of, I will tell you why that is not pan-African in nature. It is bribery of voters, in a sense that you are creating a bigger parliament where only maybe less than 10% can contribute to the bills and those discussions, and you have a majority of them not contributing, and yet they are very expensive every day. They are taking resources from the resource envelope of the national budget. You are talking about the weaknesses of these blocks, for instance. He who pays the tune, he who pays the fruit orders the tune. The piper orders the tune. It means, therefore, if, for instance, East African Community Parliament, who is meeting who built, for instance, that parliament, it is the Western powers you are blaming. You cannot extend your hands to receive, then you start blaming the one who has given you. It is very important that African governments which are sitting, one, look at trade. What are the goods that we have in a comparative advantage? For instance, agricultural products. But we are exporting raw materials, raw goods, primary goods. You export...
You should know the policies that hold our agricultural produce, globally speaking.
Then let me still continue from what you are saying. If you know that the global policies are not favoring you, you've come up with continental free trade, African continental free trade area. Within, say, okay, let us trade amongst ourselves and add value on the things we are producing.
That's what we are doing.
And
but
you
you see,
hold
on. This has been a song. This has been a song.
You need to know the forces against the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And just before Ambassador Maiga comes in here, the other thing that you're also talking about of subdividing the country and making many constituencies, we are talking about national parties. And I'm sure the FDC is one of these national parties and national unity platforms platform is actually called National Unity Platform.
Correct.
And I'm only thinking, if the country is subdivided, because somebody wants to benefit and have more members of parliament, who refuses the other persons to do? You were talking about Ghana, and of course, why I'm even not talking about Ghana is I've studied about Ghana, and it's one country that is not like many African countries. In the recent election that they had, you notice that wherever the NPP had a candidate, NDC had a candidate. They have a parliament that is 50-50 with only one independent. In Ghana, the country that you talk about, the majority of the ruling party and the opposition have the same numbers. All of them have equal numbers, one after one. Now, when you cascade it here, who refuses the Uganda People's Congress, the FDC, the NUP to possibly plant somebody somewhere? You wouldn't say.
Let me answer that actually.
Yes.
You see, it is very unfortunate that we are blinding ourselves to the realities in Uganda. In Uganda, politics and the so-called democracy has become extremely expensive. Why? Because of the money aspects that have come in. Yes, there are a few individuals from opposition parties who have had money, they work hard, they get money, they are in politics and they go to parliament. I stood in Ruchiga, for instance, to represent the people of Ruchiga in the parliament. But I didn't have money. Hold on.
Politics
you asked
monetarized.
Let me answer that question, because even if you talk about the economies, when you talk about
is actually Western Europe,
politics is monetarized everywhere.
Can I answer that question, please?
Wait a minute. In America, for instance, when the season, political season, campaign start like this, they are the most politicians who seek for finances from multinationals and home companies, and the cycle continues to the next election.
Friends of Bill Gates, friends of Barack Obama, friends of so and so.
You cannot therefore blame that one on, for instance, the NRM. No. For instance, no, it's impossible. You see, and I'm not saying that the money element is not in NRM, but let us not reduce this debate to NRM. Honestly.
Excuse me, you are asking, for instance,
what about the FDC MPs who come through? What about the entire opposition MPs?
Go back to what I said. I said there are a few.
So they come through not because of their agenda, but because they have money.
Hold on. Yes, let me clearly say that before Maiga comes in.
Allow. Yes, the ambassador.
Unless you are the only one now.
No, I'm not the only one. I'm answering questions.
So we should be given an opportunity to say something about these things.
Yes, say something.
Because the question of money, the Americans, for instance, have been trying as hard as possible to make sure that they review the financing aspect and as far as elections are concerned, but they have also failed. The Americans have failed.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So somebody comes up and they want to contest either as Republican president or senators or congressmen and so on. They go companies and also all over the place to raise these monies so that they can go and contest. So the issue of money is something that will not go away, even if it is not the NRM in power. I remember during the UPC days in the early 80s, again money was a factor. Those who had money, yes, you had a chance that you would win an election. Now, let's not be even oblivious of the fact that even this Western hand, which now is clearly visible, we can no longer say that it is invisible anymore. It is actually visible, was using some of these NGOs that were closely together in this very country, funding opposition candidates. This was not money made by them. It was actually money coming from outside. Let's be blunt.
Robert Mugabe called them another arm of government. That they have constituted themselves into a government within a government on the African continent.
So they are called, true. They are called NGOs. But those are conduits for the West to bring money here to influence the outcome of a political contest. And fortunately, this government has been so alive to that, and they have blocked those things. Monies were supposed to come here and influence the outcome of the last elections last year. I'm sure that one, at least those who have been following things in this country know it very well, that actually money was being used, money was being channeled through NGOs to influence the contest that we had just last year. But let me say this, that in my view, this is now a personal opinion, in my view, change of government is not a necessary prerequisite for us to realize pan-Africanism.
Absolutely.
It is not, because we tried, look, for instance, at what we had in this country between April 1979 to should I say the end of 1985. We changed the heads of state 5 times, and we can count them. We had Idi Amin. Yusuf Lule came. Godfrey Lukongo Abinaisa came. We had Paulo Mwanga, and then Milton Obote. 5 times we changed the government. But every other time we changed the head of state, the situation in the country got even much worse. And that's why Ugandans in this country, I think, got tired of those kinds of things. And they said in 1986 that, yes, President Yoweri Museveni, you've come. We are giving you the mantle of power in this country. You rule. And he has been having that goodwill from the people of this country for all these years. That's why they keep electing him. Because people had got tired of changing governments. Now, connecting that to Pan-Africanism, I think the president has actually done his job perfectly well. And as far as Pan-Africanism is concerned, I mean, the examples are many. The meetings, international meetings we have held here regarding African conflicts, the deployments of the UPDF outside our borders. Yes, there was a debacle in the DRC, which has been mentioned in this conversation of ours much earlier. There was that debacle where people went and stole timber and so on and so forth. But you see, when we enter the UPDF, or when we enter these political parties, the door is always wide open. You don't say, for you, you're a cannibal, don't enter. A thief will come in for as long as you can swell the numbers of a political party. And I believe even the UPDF tries actually to try and find out this person who is being recruited in the UPDF, what is the background, is he a criminal, and all this kind of. The UPDF has actually, it is the best institution in this country, much better than even political parties. It is it's the most organized, most disciplined,
I agree with you on
and so on and so forth. Even when it comes to corruption, you don't hear about those huge corruption cases in the UPDF like in the rest of the institutions that we have in this country. And so, when it comes to, for instance, our participation in Somalia, the Americans came, and you remember, they tried and they were chased out. After killing quite a number of their soldiers who were pulled on trucks in the streets. They took off. It took one son of Africa, called the President Yoweri Museveni, to change the stakes on the ground in Somalia. And now everyone wants to go to Somalia, UN and so on and so forth. But the Americans went there, and they failed. The UPDF went. President Yoweri Museveni sanctioned, and Sudan is another, Southern Sudan. You remember? Members of parliament say, oh no, this is a constitutional matter. We shouldn't talk about it. We should have come to parliament, blah, blah, blah. Even DRC, this is most recent. It is also possible that the first time we went to the DRC, actually, the objectives were not very clear. But this other time,
Operation
the very last one in November when we went, I think the objectives were very clear. Just to go and disable these terrorists and finish them off. It's very clear. So I am certain that we're not going to hear about those kinds of things, that people have gone to steal gold and timber and so on and so forth. Southern Sudan, again, Parliament was making noise. We went there in the spirit.
He's not a prophet, but he has said
President Yoweri Museveni has been very candid about this. Shortly after, we went into Southern Sudan, and I'm told the UPDF, once it arrived in Juba, Riek Machar's soldiers took off 300 miles away from Juba. Reason, the discipline of the UPDF and really implementing the spirit of Pan-Africanism. That's why President Yoweri Museveni will keep defeating for as long as he wants, and for as long as the people of Uganda want him to be in power. Defeating these political parties here because they are disorganized, and their actual objectives are not clear. They are not clear. That's facts.
Talk about the issues. He says we have issues of borrowing. We've over-borrowed.
Absolutely. That's one other thing which I want to actually talk about.
It's we who got those people that we actually even put
the international economic system has been arranged in such a way, and I think it was Comrade Rugarama who spoke about it. It has been arranged in such a way that, particularly our continent, if there was a ladder, it is the one at the bottom. This is at the bottom. I mean, you can talk about the Americans, you can talk about Europe, you can talk about the Asians, you can talk about the South Americans, and so on and so forth. And when it comes to that ladder, the Americans on top, the Europeans are there, maybe as number 2, and then the Asians number 3, the South Americans probably number 4, but Africa is at the bottom. It has been arranged in such a way. And so when you see these institutions like World Bank, and I'm not saying that they are the biggest devils that we have in the world. Why, for instance, are they having, IMF has offices in China, World Bank, the same story, and all over the world, even here, they have representatives. Did you think that they came here just, these Ugandans are very wonderful people to massage us? They didn't come here to massage. This is a business. It is a business. And therefore, any attempt by anyone on the African continent to try and bring us, all of us together, in the spirit of pan-Africanism, they will be fought. There can even be a coup.
They have
There can even be a coup if you don't know.
African leaders who have sabotaged the World Bank policies.
Gentlemen,
the coup in an assassination of Gaddafi was because he was trying to join hands and create BRICS, BRICS, which was an alternative institution of World Bank, and he was joining with Brazil,
Russia,
China,
India,
South Africa,
Brazil.
Russia, and you see, therefore, for us not to fully appreciate the impact of World Bank and IMF, in as far as the organization and the running of governments on the African continent is concerned, is to miss the point and miss it terribly.
now, from a very staunch Pan-Africanist and of course from a diplomat who is also a member of the NRM, let's allow to hear from Alternative Soma.
I thank you, my brother,
Grutaro.
and Your Excellency, the Ambassador. We can, again, give excuses that they have done, that those institutions have done ABCD.
They're still doing.
What have we done as African continent? Because the topic was Africa's global agenda.
What haven't we done?
What we haven't done are the following. We haven't organized ourselves in terms of business with the rest of the world.
Okay.
Yes, I will tell you. Look at the export, the value and the volume of exports to those other countries. If the value and the volume of what we export those countries is substantially still very low, we are not go on the negotiating table. It's like you go on a party with somebody who you've lent your suit. When he's going to sit and he sees the chair not so clean, he will still stand up and not sit down. We are claiming we are governments. We also go to the United Nations Security Council, speak like somebody said he used to enjoy Mugabe's speeches. They were just speeches. Then he goes back to Zimbabwe and he comes. Hold on, my brother.
We never go to Security Council. Where?
We go there. Presidents go there. The National Security Council, they go there and they give speeches. Even the president of Uganda gives speeches.
UN Security Council.
United Nations, rather General Assembly. Sorry, thank you for your correction. We go there,
UNGA.
we give speeches, we give all nice speeches. We come back home, our human rights records are so terrible. We come back home, our business strategies are so terrible in relationship to the rest of the world. Japan, you go on the road from Wandegeya to Jinja Road. See all those cars. Chiramotos, every day we are pushing money. No Ugandan car on the road. We are expanding European and Asian economies. We are not expanding our own economies. We sell coffee, bags and bags of coffee. They sell to us 1 tin of Nescafe at an exorbitant prices. What is so difficult? Is it so difficult to get that machine that makes Nescafe here in Uganda? What is so difficult? We still have Mivumba. Hold on. I see people laughing. I need to be very careful here. We see people go to Owino. You see a whole market of second-hand clothes, panties, all sorts of second-hand clothes. An African, a Ugandan, is still putting on Muvumba. Yet we grow cotton. Yet we had cotton ginneries here in eastern Uganda. Why can't we say the economy of clothes, the cloth industry, what Honorable His Excellency...
The apparel industry.
The apparel industry. Thank you very much for the exchange. I don't know whether it has been made in Uganda. The question is... thank you very much. The question is, what are we doing to change the economics of this country? When you lose money, you lose respect. President Keaton said, it is the economy stupid. If you cannot significantly bring something on the table, you're not talking about Pan-Africanism. When you talk about Uganda going to Somalia, who is paying those salaries for the soldiers who have gone to Somalia? It is the European Union and the American government, not the Ugandan government.
They are there on whose mandate?
Hold on. You are there, very good, because President Museveni sent them there, and thank you very much. By the way, I appreciate him because I've been to places where Ugandan soldiers are, and the job they are doing in some of the areas. But the question is, if, for instance, they cannot be paid, they will come back here. Because they cannot go there and fight. The equipment they have, we sell these commodities, we buy guns. Guns to terrorize the people of where? Why can't we sit down and say, yes, enough is enough. These guns you talk about, Riek Machar and his rebels, these things in Eastern Congo, the ADF, why can't we sit as Pan-Africanists and say, ADF, what is your problem? What is your problem? And we resolve.
And who is ADF?
Betty Vigombe tried. Betty Vigombe tried. Rutaro Stevens.
Who is ADF? Because I've had these conversations of why do we hit them? Why don't we talk to them? But nobody is willing to actually say, Rugarama is ADF, talk to him. Nobody is actually willing to say, I have a contact of ADF and his Jagenda Semakola. Who do we talk to? And I'm thinking we could pursue that line. But who is ADF that we actually sit them there and talk to them?
There is no leadership. There is no organization that has no leadership. And again, I'm not in intelligence to say that I know who ADF is and who ADF is not. And the most important thing is, let me conclude on this.
You want UPDF to talk to ADF. Are you serious about that?
We have tried.
UPDF should talk to ADF.
We have tried. How did we end the war in northern? We used the Betty Vigombe. She did a very good job.
The difference, there is a difference between
ADF. So we ended through negotiations.
But even then, there is a difference between ADF and LRA. If you study them, you have a terrorist group here, but you also had a rebel group that wanted to take power, and they had the movement, they had the political wing, they even had people voluntarily who came out, the Maos and everybody, Bishop Adamas, to actually say we are negotiating for these people. Who is there to say we are this other wing of the ADF that we are actually coming out to talk about their issues? Because what is ADF fighting for? Is ADF saying we want to dislodge Museveni and take power as ADF party in this country or so?
It would be simplistic for us to an organization that has been able to sustain itself in those forests with the guns, with all abilities, simply say that organization has no leadership because it has guns.
No leadership. I am asking who they are. I'm not saying they have no leadership.
Thank God. Because they've been operating outside our boundaries.
We have gone there, we shall hit them there, and I'm glad.
LRA was operating on the ground here.
They came here the other day and hit us.
And therefore they had the political agenda.
They had the political agenda.
What is the political agenda? People you're trying to defend. In fact, Ugandans who are seeing you trying to defend.
I want you to be very honest with yourself. No.
Yes,
don't put words in my mouth. I did not defend. I said they exist. And because they exist, somebody must establish who they are.
That's why they're beating them, because they exist.
Hold on. I don't support terrorists hitting any Ugandan. I have even made interviews with
ADF and Congo, ADF and the DRC are in this operation Shujaa to beat somebody who actually exists. And this person is called ADF.
Correct.
For the different things that they've done.
Correct.
But the demand, the political demand of why don't you talk to them? Everybody keeps asking this question, especially from the Pan-African angle. What should we be talking with the ADF, for example? How should we sit them down and say, what are we talking about?
They have killed Ugandans.
So what should we talk about?
They're killing innocent Ugandans.
So
the first thing is stop killing innocent people. That's number one.
Just like that?
Hold on. When you go on an agenda, when you have a meeting, a conference like that, you set an agenda. And one of the items on the agenda is stop killing the people, the innocent people of Uganda, of course, and the Congo. But there must be an attempt in the world, and more so in Africa. Talk about Boko Haram in Nigeria. Talk about ADF.
The government of Nigeria has talked to Boko Haram. The USA has talked to Al-Qaeda
and ISIS.
But you see,
because that's the way.
I will answer you. You see, when you ask a question, I will answer it. What has been the consequence of not either talking to those people? If they have bombed them, has America succeeded in defeating Al-Qaeda? Has America succeeded in defeating ISIS? Has America succeeded in hitting the Taliban? The Taliban the other day ran after them. They came running, and they were running like running. All right? Why did America, with all its powers, with all its guns, with all its resources. Not every war is won by a gun. Not every war is won by a gun. Why did America run away from Afghanistan? They ran away. They were like children running away, fearing sea lions. Why? Didn't they have guns? They even left the guns there.
So you want America to talk to ISIS? You want America to talk to Al Qaeda?
The other day they had actually an informal meeting
Muhammad Buhari to actually negotiate with ISIS. But I think
Boko Haram.
Boko Haram.
I have clearly said this, and I will say it.
You're saying it
in
again.
fact, America, when after they had left Afghanistan, through a third party, which is it this country next to Afghanistan? Is it Turkey? They organize. They don't recognize the Afghan, the Taliban as the leadership, but they realize they are Americans who stayed in Afghanistan. And somebody must somehow protect those people.
Okay, our time is running up, and I'm only just looking at the time here. We have less than 7 minutes. I want us to wrap this up, conclude our conversation today on this particular question, and I'll take your conclusive remarks, and then Ndugu Rugarama, and of course the ambassador will speak finally, and we get out of studios. Finally, where do you see Africa and the African agenda in the global space?
I want Africa to organize themselves in a form of trade. Okay. They must trade, they must do business, they must realize that we are weaker economies, and because we are so weak, that's why those other countries come and dictate to us. We must come up with clear policies that facilitate trade. In Uganda, for instance, we give Chinese investment license, but go to Chikubo. They are Chinese in Chikubo, doing business in Chikubo. Businesses which should have been left to Ugandans to do. All right? We are seeing other nationals coming in Uganda to do this business of what do we call hawking. You find some Arabs hawking saucepans. That is not how we are going to.
It is not acceptable. It's not
to be acceptable on the global stage. Okay. We must realize who we are, and that's when we can.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Rutaro from the Blue Party. Ndugu Rugarama, your conclusive remarks. We need to be out of here.
Time is running very fast against us, and let me just state the following: that the positioning of Africa and its ability to overcome its challenges can only be properly contextualized when one looks at, for instance, a beautifully written paper by our patron, the President of the Republic of Uganda, when he was looking at the bottlenecks, Africa's bottlenecks. There are about 11 points: the African Balkanization, the weak states, the connectivity of Africa, and that includes the infrastructure and the development, the infrastructure development, issues of, and like PRO Rumumba has talked about currency, the issue of trade, that we are not trading amongst ourselves, and the list goes on and on and on. There are about 11 points, which I don't have time to go into now, but at least I have mentioned about 5 of them. Now, Africa, I am happy that we are not just agonizing, but we are organizing. Because you will look at, for instance, the issues of trade through the Africa Free Continental Trade, that we are doing a good job. The issues of peace and security, silencing the gun. When you look at the bigger Magna Charta in the Africa 2063, you can see our vision and mission being very well captured there. And I prophesy that going by what we are doing right now, in as far as strengthening the regional blocks, trying to achieve the objectives as contained and operationalizing the Africa Free Continental Area, and also trying to realize the Africa Vision 2063, we are on a proper trajectory that even with the ever-increasing presence of imperialism, we can see light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, thank you so much, Ndugu Rugarama. And finally, in another maybe 2 minutes, Ambassador, my guy, talk about that as we also end this conversation. And of course, talk about trade. The other day we were in Dubai for the expo, and we Ugandans, we're actually up and about everywhere trying to castigate every good about Uganda. And somebody from somewhere actually said we had, I think, the 3rd best pavilion amongst all those who were there, but Uganda didn't want to even hear that we actually performed well. I don't know what that means.
Absolutely, and at the end of it all, I think we'll attract more than $5 billion. Already we have attracted more than $2 billion out of that expo in UAE. But I just want to say that pan-africanism, I think, is work in progress, and there are things that we need to do internal on the continent. And then we eventually develop one strong voice that I think can stand up to the international challenges as we have already been speaking about them.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the listeners here who has been following the conversation, Mr. Philip Enyogoi, he actually says, thank you so much for the party in studios, but he also puts me to task to answer the question whether this chiteng is actually made in Uganda. Yes, Philip. Yes, it is made in Uganda. The chiteng is made in Uganda, and of course the design was also by Ugandan. So we're trying to be Ugandan, we're trying to be African, we're trying, and actually I don't think that Rutaro's shirt was actually made in Uganda, but my chiteng is in Uganda. No, for the ambassador, I can excuse you, but you are a Chinese now, I think. You But I want to thank you so much. My guests in studio this morning, Ambassador Henry Maiga from Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much for having allowed to join us today. I thank you, Ndugu Rutaro from the FDC, and welcome another time into a Pan-African Friday. Comrade Rugarama, always with us here. We thank you so much for sparing time to be with us. And of course, my colleagues, Akol Mandi Amazima, who didn't make it to studios today, and Ndugu Mtuta, who was an assignment somewhere in Isinjiro, but he will be with us next week on Friday. We also thought we'd have a member of parliament from Kenya, but we failed to get through to the connection. We failed to get our connection to our comrade in Nairobi. So we'll return next week on Friday with our Pan-African Friday. Just wishing you all the best. My name is Jagenda Semakula Ziksoka, greeting you and wishing you the very best of our Pan-African week today. For God and my country, stay blessed. Thank you so much, General.